What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into our first news. Sean O'Malley recently gave his thoughts on a massive bantamweight clash that hasn't been getting the attention it probably deserves. Merab is set to face Cory Sandhagen in what could be one of the most important fights in the division right now. Many are already counting Cory out, with Merab seen as the heavy favorite. But O'Malley reminded everyone not to underestimate how slick and well-rounded Cory really is. His timing, footwork, and range control have troubled some of the very best fighters in the UFC, and that's something worth keeping in mind. On Mike Perry's podcast, O'Malley broke down the matchup in detail, pointing out that Cory's style is actually very similar to his own. He admitted that he saw how Merab was able to deal with that style when they fought, and that's one of the main reasons why he's leaning toward Merab in this fight. He explained that while Cory is definitely skilled and dangerous, the way he moves and strikes mirrors much of his own approach, and Merab already proved how effectively he can neutralize it. For that reason, O'Malley believes Merab's relentless pressure and grappling will give him the edge once again. O'Malley also opened up on a personal note, saying that his 2 losses to Merab were tough, but they forced him to refocus in ways that completely changed his career and mindset. He admitted those setbacks humbled him and gave him the discipline he needed to grow. Now, instead of thinking about testing himself at featherweight, he confirmed he's locked into the bantamweight division at 135 pounds and is determined to make a strong comeback. Breaking down the fight further, O'Malley gave credit to Cory for his past performances, especially his work against Umar, where he managed to create scrambles and defend well against back control attempts. He noted that Umar and Merab have different styles, with Umar being slicker in transitions while Merab thrives in grinding, suffocating positions. What really stood out to O'Malley is Merab's raw strength and his insane gas tank. He said once Merab gets a hold of you, it feels like a different level of pressure, something very few fighters can deal with. Still, O'Malley didn't completely rule out Cory. He said skill for skill, Cory might actually be the more complete fighter overall, but Merab's particular style is just so dominant and effective that it reminds him of Khabib's ability to make world-class opponents look helpless. In the end, while O'Malley leans toward Merab getting the win, he admitted he wouldn't be shocked if Cory delivered something spectacular inside the octagon. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We are constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That is why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update here on MMA Pulse News. Moving on to another news, Bisping has given his take on the possibility of a massive crossover fight between Ilia and Terence Crawford. In the wake of their heated exchanges, the two have continued throwing verbal shots at one another. According to Bisping, the idea isn't far-fetched, especially with Dana White recently working out a deal involving Crawford. He explained that if the matchup were to materialize, it would undoubtedly generate huge interest and, more importantly, a lot of money. The reason is simple. It brings together 2 massive fan bases. Just like Mayweather versus Conor, there would be the entire boxing audience on one side and the loyal MMA fans on the other, making it a spectacle too big to ignore. Bisping pointed out that Dana is in a unique position, with Crawford having already done business under Dana's banner, and Ilia currently signed with the UFC. The framework is already in place for something like this to actually happen. He stressed that while it might sound unlikely, stranger things have happened in combat sports. At the end of the day, big fights get made when there's money and demand behind them. This would be no different, especially when considering the hype that continues to build each time Ilia and Crawford trade shots online. Still, Bisping raised the critical point about whether Crawford would even entertain the idea. Would he see value in stepping into the ring with someone like Ilia, who comes from an MMA background rather than boxing? On the surface, it might not look like the type of matchup Crawford needs for his legacy. Yet, the financial pull could be strong enough to make him think twice. As Bisping noted, when fighters have already reached the top and don't have many other big challenges in front of them, unusual opportunities like these can suddenly make sense. He reminded everyone of how unlikely Conor versus Mayweather seemed at first, yet it still happened and turned into one of the biggest pay-per-view events of all time. That same formula could play out again if the stars align. Dana has shown he's willing to push boundaries when the reward is right, and with Crawford already tied into business with him, there's no telling how far those talks could go. For Ilia, the chance to step into a global boxing spotlight would be career-defining. For Crawford, it could mean another massive payday and an opportunity to prove his dominance across audiences. Moving on to another news, Darren Till has once again made headlines, this time for ripping into Renato Moicano after a clip surfaced from the Show Me the Money podcast. In the video, Moicano and Gilbert Burns were seen discussing a potential pure boxing match between Till and Luke Rockhold. They debated who would have the edge, and their comments quickly caught the attention of Till. Moicano started by suggesting that if the matchup was purely boxing, Rockhold might have the upper hand. Burns chimed in, saying that in a kickboxing setting, he would lean more toward Rockhold as well. The conversation then drifted into Till's age, with the two laughing and speculating about how old he actually looks. Burns guessed he was around 31, maybe 32, but they both agreed that Till looked far older than that. They joked that he looked like he was pushing 40, pointing to the wear and tear of fighting. Moicano even went as far as saying it might just be the English look that made him seem older. The pair then brought up Tommy Fury in a passing comment, calling him crazy, before circling back to Rockhold. Burns said he believed Rockhold could beat Till in a boxing-only fight, despite Rockhold being around 40 years old. Moicano reminded him that Mike Perry had already beaten Rockhold in bare-knuckle boxing, making him quit, but Burns quickly countered by saying that anyone facing Perry in bare-knuckle would likely face the same fate. The discussion carried on casually, but the remarks about Till's appearance and skill level didn't sit well with him. Till later responded with a fiery post directed at both Burns and Moicano. He mocked their comments, saying, "Please someone tell Gilbert Burns he looks like a crumpled up piece of paper, and Renato can't even string a sentence together. I speak better Portuguese than both of them guys. How embarrassing that the country they are from, I am more from that country than them." His statement not only dismissed their criticisms but also attacked their appearance and communication skills in classic Till fashion. The response immediately stirred up reactions online, with fans divided between finding Till's clapback hilarious and others calling it unnecessary. Regardless, it added more fuel to the ongoing chatter about Till's potential return, and whether he'll step into the boxing world against someone like Rockhold or continue chasing big fights in MMA. For now, one thing is clear, Till is never one to let comments slide, and he continues to fire back whenever his name gets dragged into debates. Moving on to another news, Jared Gordon has finally explained why he went ahead and fought just one day after being hit by a car. Gordon stepped into the octagon against Rafa Garcia at Noche UFC with a sprained MCL, a serious setback that ended up costing him the fight as he was stopped by TKO in the third round. Speaking to Full Send MMA, Gordon revealed the mindset and circumstances that led him to take such a massive risk despite being injured. He said that on the way to the ceremonial weigh-ins, he was already limping badly. In his mind, the thought of going on stage visibly hurt wasn't an option. He bit down, pushed through, and acted as if nothing had happened. He didn't want doctors, officials, or the promotion to step in and stop him from fighting. According to Gordon, admitting the injury right then would have been seen as making excuses, and that was the last thing he wanted. Bilal Muhammad later tweeted about the accident, which forced the story out into the public, but until then, Gordon had no plans of telling anyone. He explained that his decision was about momentum. He had just secured a new contract, scored a knockout win in his previous fight, and was booked to fight on a main card against a tough opponent like Rafa Garcia. For him, the opportunity was too valuable to let slip away. He felt he was the better fighter going in, and that this was his chance to shine under the big spotlight. More than money, Gordon said it was about proving himself, showing up for the UFC and not letting fans down. He mentioned having over 30 messages from family and close friends, including his father and brother, who were excited to see him compete. That level of support made it even harder to think about pulling out. Gordon also addressed critics online, who claimed fighters only accept these situations because they're broke. He fired back, saying he has income outside of fighting and doesn't depend solely on the sport. He dismissed negative comments, especially from people upset about losing bets. In his words, "You think I give about you and your bets, you degenerate loser." For him, the decision was personal, not financial. He acknowledged the timing played a huge role as well. If the accident had happened months before the fight, pulling out would have been understandable, as the UFC would have had time to find a replacement. But to weigh in and then back out the very next day, that would have looked terrible on his record. He feared being labeled unreliable, shelved by the promotion, or even losing trust with the matchmakers. He didn't want to test those waters. Instead, he chose to move forward, leaning on the fact that he had just completed a great training camp, felt sharp, and believed he could still compete despite the setback. In the end, it didn't go his way, but Gordon stood by the choice, saying the situation was complicated, and he had too much on the line to walk away. Moving on to another news, Bas Rutten has shared his thoughts on what should headline the historic UFC card set to take place at the White House. According to Rutten, the main event that makes the most sense is Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. While Dana White has expressed hesitation about having Jones in the headline spot for this particular card, Rutten believes it is the perfect opportunity for the UFC to make history. He explained that this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, something that may never happen again, and it deserves the biggest fight possible. During an interview with Bloody Elbow, Rutten laid out his reasoning. He said that in his opinion, every champion should be featured on this card, and for him, the natural headliner is Aspinall against Jones. He emphasized that if Jones commits, then he commits fully, because that's the type of fighter he has always been. Especially when it comes to an event at the White House, the magnitude is unlike anything seen before in combat sports. Rutten described it as a one-time deal, one that could etch itself into history. While he hopes that future presidents might also be open to hosting MMA at the White House, he admitted that nothing is guaranteed. That makes this upcoming card even more significant. Rutten went on to explain how impactful it would be to have Jones take part in such a groundbreaking event. He pointed out that the entire world would be watching, not just MMA fans. The spectacle of seeing a UFC event staged at the White House would capture global attention, and having the heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall face off with one of the greatest fighters in the sport's history would elevate it even further. He believes Jones has the potential to be remembered as the best fighter ever, and placing him in this slot would only strengthen that legacy. Of course, Rutten also acknowledged the challenges behind making this fight a reality. Reports have surfaced that the UFC already attempted to meet Jones' financial demands for the Aspinall fight, only for Jones to step back from committing. That hesitation is part of why Dana White is reluctant to have him headline the White House card. The concern is that negotiations might fall apart again, leaving the promotion scrambling for a replacement at the last minute. Still, Rutten feels that if the right deal is put in place and Jones is motivated, there's no better option for the historic occasion. He highlighted that the White House card isn't just another event. It's something that will be talked about for years to come, and the UFC should seize the chance to showcase the very best talent on its roster. For Rutten, the combination of Aspinall and Jones checks every box. It delivers star power, championship stakes, and global intrigue. While there are obstacles to overcome, Rutten remains hopeful that both sides can come together and make it happen. Moving on to another news, Kevin Lee has found himself in a frustrating situation after his recent fight. Following his knockout loss to Gaji Rabadanov, Lee suffered a broken jaw that required it to be wired shut. What has shocked him even more than the injury itself is the massive hospital bill he is now facing. According to Lee, the charges have reached over $30,000, and he has been battling with hospitals and insurance companies to make sense of it all. He posted a video on his social media, explaining his experience in detail and voicing his frustration at the outrageous costs. Lee said that after the fight on June 20th in Kansas, he was forced to go to a local hospital to get checked out. He explained that they performed a CT scan of his face, head, and brain, and then handed him some ibuprofen before sending him home. That short visit came with a shocking bill of $31,000. Breaking it down, he revealed that $22,000 of that was charged just for the CT scans alone. Nearly $9,000 more was added for the emergency room visit, even though he was only there for about an hour, and as he described it, most of the time he was simply sitting in a hallway. The numbers left him stunned. He pointed out how absurd it was to be billed such a massive amount for so little treatment, especially when compared to the care he received later. The next day, after returning to Florida where he lives, Lee had to undergo the same CT scans again. This time, the cost was just $420, and they even included an additional x-ray of his shoulder. For him, the comparison was unbelievable. On one side, more than $22,000 for a set of scans in Kansas. On the other, the exact same scans plus an x-ray in Florida for a fraction of the cost. Lee went on to describe the situation as completely unreasonable. He questioned how a hospital could justify such a bill when they did not even provide proper treatment for his injury. He explained that it wasn't until he went to the hospital in Florida that his jaw was actually wired shut to prevent further damage. Meanwhile, the Kansas hospital only gave him ibuprofen and discharged him, yet they were the ones charging astronomical fees. He calculated that the Kansas bill was nearly 400 times higher than what he paid in Florida for the same level of scans, which left him struggling to understand how this was even possible. In his video, Lee admitted he has been calling hospitals and insurance companies for weeks, but every time he gets nothing but the runaround. He sounded exasperated as he asked for help from anyone online who might know how to deal with a situation like this. The charges in his words simply don't make sense, and he's now left battling both the physical pain of his injury and the financial burden of trying to resolve a bill that feels completely unjustified. Moving on to another news, Rampage Jackson found himself in a heated moment at a bar after clashing with some guys who were filming him without his permission. The situation unfolded when Jackson noticed the group recording nearby, and he made it clear he wasn't comfortable being filmed. He reminded them that being a public figure doesn't mean he has to tolerate people pointing cameras at him wherever he goes. Jackson's frustration was evident, but he also tried to explain that it wasn't about hostility, just about respect. As the video shows, Jackson could be heard saying repeatedly that he didn't expect them to understand. He told them, "Hey, I can hear everything. When you're a public figure, you just don't like people filming you." His tone went back and forth between calm and agitated as he emphasized his point. No, it's all good," he continued, before repeating, "Guess what though? I don't expect you to understand. It's okay." Jackson seemed caught between irritation and acceptance, aware that not everyone would see the situation from his perspective. The men filming tried to respond saying they weren't filming him directly, but Jackson wasn't having it, making it clear that whether they admitted it or not, he felt disrespected. "I'm filming, but we're not filming y'all. You know what I'm saying?" one of the men said, but Jackson stood firm. He told them again not to get pressed, repeating over and over that he didn't expect them to understand. As the back and forth continued, Jackson doubled down, saying, "I just had to say it. I don't expect you to understand. You won't understand." He seemed to be trying to drive home the idea that unless someone has lived life as a celebrity constantly being watched and recorded, they wouldn't get how frustrating it can be. At one point, his frustration became even more obvious when he said, "I don't give a but the thing is I can hear everything they're saying. They don't know." Throughout the exchange, Jackson's body language and words carried both irritation and a sense of resignation. It wasn't a full-blown altercation, but it was clear he felt disrespected and wanted to stand his ground. The group may not have realized the impact their filming had on him, but Jackson made sure to make his feelings known. It's another reminder of the tension public figures often face when trying to live normal moments in public spaces, only to have cameras pointed their way. That's it from MMA Pulse News. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.